to the channel. I'm going to split up this next bit of work into a bunch of different videos. So if you check out the video that I released earlier about using supabase with Ionic Framework, you will notice that was kind of a long watch me code, about an hour long. I'm going to break these up into like smaller 15-20 minute chunks, and I'm going to focus on UI in one video and then implementing the services to support the UI in the next video. So what we're trying to do in this video is we're going to well, in general, what we're going to do is we are going to integrate create account, login, forgot password using supabase as our backend and Ionic Framework as our front end. So in this first video, we're going to focus on creating a login screen, a create account screen, and a forgot password screen. Because the way supabase works is that when you forgot the password, you click a link, you enter the email address, and then the service will send you an email. You click on the email, and the URL that we get sent back, we have to sniff the URL and look for a specific token. And if we see that token on the URL, then we know you're trying to change the password. And when you come into the application, we want to redirect you to the change password screen. So we're going to lay out all those screens first, and that'll be this video. And then the next video, we'll update the service to support all that functionality. But a few things we need to do right now just to get things working is I've moved around the supabase keys to support the Vue CLI has a .env file. And in the .env file, I have the specific keys that are needed here for the supabase key and the supabase URL. And those keys are, the way it sets up is based on the environment variable, we have a supabase key and a supabase URL. And if you remember from the last video, this is kind of the client that initializes supabase that we use everywhere. A couple of things that we want to do to kind of make this a little bit cleaner is that we want to appropriately catch errors. So so that when you guys are downloading this project for yourself and it's not working, you will get some sort of feedback on why it's not working. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap a try catch block around this work. So when it attempts to start up, if you haven't set the configuration, what'll happen is at least you'll get some sort of alert to let you know what's going on. So we're going to not get too fancy here. We're just going to catch the error and give you back the error message. So then you should know, hey, let me go check my configuration file and set my properties appropriately so that it should work. Let's see. Let assign a value but is never used. Supabase sign. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting that we are in. Now that that's the other thing. I moved the application out of code base into a normal environment. All right, so we're exporting. Oh, it's default. So this guy needs to get changed. Now let's reload this guy. Close our debugger. And there you go. All right, so now we're actually seeing our products that are in the database, which is where we were before. Let's make sure I can add a new product. Price $10, $10, and pants. Maybe you can update some categories here. Save. And all right, so we're back to where we were before. We are using the .env file to hold our credentials. We've cleaned up our configuration a little bit, so we got an error message. I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's comment this out. Error parsing unexpected token. Or it doesn't like that back there. Let's do this and see if this works. See, so supabase URL is required, so at least we're getting the error message when you start up if you don't set your configuration properly. So that's what this try catch thing is about. Okay, so let's get this back. We have our basic UI going. Let's click OK. All right, so now the first thing we want to do, like I said, was we want to be able to log in. So let's start with the basics. So this is all about Ionic. So here let's go here and let's just start with creating a new file. So we have a new file, and we're going to call our new file user login.view. And we are going to, let's see, use that little plugin that we got here. This is an old one, so we don't really need composition API anymore. You just say view, and that gives us what we want. There's some basic things that happen in all of these applications. There's a whole bunch of imports. And so to save us time on that, I'm just going to cut and paste them in since I know what are the imports that I need for my UI. I need the content, the page, the item, label, some inputs, an image, and a footer we're going to show. And because I've imported them here, remember we need to make sure we add them all to components. So let's just cut and paste the components in also. So these are all the Ionic components that I know I'm going to need, and the components actually belong inside of my function. We have export default components, and then we also let's give this thing a name. I'll set the name to be the same, user login. Or a comma there. Save. Get ourselves formatted. All right, and then we don't. So we know where you're going to need a router. So let's get that guy in here. Since this is a login page is going to have to go from login page to create account page, and you're going to need the router to do that. And so the use router should come from the, if my memory serves me correct, the use router comes from view router. So let's add view router in here as another import. We need, that's what we got for now. So for the UI, we are going to need to get an email and password. And so for the email and password, we are going to create a reference email password called CRUDs, credentials for short. It's kind of what I do. I use brief things. And then at the bottom here, we know we're going to need to get access to CRUD in the UI. So let's just put that here. So that's getting returned. And then we know we're going to need a function called doLogin. So let's add that down there. And we definitely need to pass the router because we need the router to go through other pages. So we'll put the router down there. And I think that should be enough to get us started. Now let's go up and start to do some of the UI. Once again, don't want to spend much time typing some things, so I'll just kind of cut and paste some pieces and start to explain them as we go along. As you know, in Ionic, everything starts with the page and content. So in this page, I'm not using a header, so we're just going to go straight with page and content. And then inside the content, we need a couple of input fields. We're going to have an email field. And so we have our, the item wraps the whole thing. Let me see if I can switch this. No, I don't have it set on my router yet. So the item wraps the email label and the email input. And then the next one that we have is the password. And so we have our password field, and we set the type so that it hides the characters it's getting typed in, and then we're going to bind it to the credentials so that as I'm entering the values, I get the results. And then at the bottom, we are going to need two buttons. We are going to need a button to actually execute our login. So on a click event, we're going to call our doLogin function, which is right here, the function that we're returning. And then for the create account, we're going to use our router. Where's my router? My router that I'm returning. We're going to use our router to push to the new path called create account. This is styling to say, give me a button that kind of is a block, and then I'm going to clear it so that there's a little bit of a difference between what the create account button looks like, which is a secondary action, and the login button, which is the primary action. And so we're gonna start with that. And then the other thing that we're going to do, as I stated, we're going to add functionality for forgot password. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a footer. And in the bottom for the footer here, we are going to allow you to click a link and execute the forgot password action. And so let's add a function for that. Do forgot password. All right, and let's put the placeholders in for these functions so that we can actually render this UI a bit. So let's start with the do login, and then the other one that we have is the do forgot password. So do forgot password. I believe, let's see, is this thing going to complain? I think once we get it working, it's going to complain because I have these asyncs and I'm not doing anything inside of them. But it's not complaining now. Browser's working. Let's see what our pages look like. So to do that, let's go to our router. Let's go to my router. Also, if you notice, I'm using JavaScript, plain JavaScript, not TypeScript. I know some people have expressed concern about that in the past. All the examples are in TypeScript, so I figured let's just go through a whole one here in plain old JavaScript. So we are in our router. I don't know how you say it. Let's start by adding our login path. So what we want to do is we're going to add an entry into this route array called login. Okay. So we have this path called login. We wanted to use our user login component, see that I created right here. And then we're going to show how you can pass meta information to the router. And what we're going to do is for all the fields that require auth, we're going to set the requires auth to true. I don't really need it here on this path since it doesn't require authentication, but just for consistency, we're going to add it there. And so the other paths that we know we're going to need is we're going to need a login path. We're going to need a create account path. So let's add that while we're here. And I think we call the create account called user create. It's going to complain because that isn't there yet, but we'll put a placeholder in. And so we have user create, and then the last one that we need is change password. Because as I said, we're going to support change password. Change. So we get those three paths in. None of them require authentication. Our router is complaining because it doesn't see any of these things. So user login. So I know everything's going to end up in that same views directory. So we'll just do this too. And we'll say user login. We'll add that here. User create. Add that there, and then is that all it's complaining about now? And then for add product, it's already been declared out because I have it. I change password. Oh, then this is supposed to be change password. Okay, so let's get this change password component and add this guy up top. Okay, so the router is happy again. But no, what? Reactive, 2 refs, use Ion image. Okay, I got a couple of guys left over here and use login that I'm going to use later, but I'm not using yet. We know we don't need 2 refs and reactive. I think all we need is ref. Let's see if that gets part of it. And Ion image. Well, what I did is just kind of make this thing look a little bit neat. I am going to we put a logo on the user login page. So let's just kind of drop that in. You know, every now and then you got to try to make things look a little bit professional. So let's drop in our logo right underneath the content. And so it's looking for this logo, so I'm going to have to return a logo down here in the bottom. So let's add a logo down here to something that's being returned. And then the logo is if you look here inside my assets, I'm going to use this Ionic supabase. I want this logo to kind of render on my home page. So on my login page. So to make that happen, we have this Ion image, and then what we're going to do is we are going to import the image, and by importing it, it'll get it from the right directory and everything. So all I need to do is, this ampersand lets it know it's the default directory, and then the assets, and then supabase view logo ping. Okay, views password. So right now it's complaining that it can't find these other views that I've created. So to keep things real simple, let's just create change password to VUE, and then what was the other one? Let's go back to route. Let's close some of the things we don't need. The router. So it was change password and user create. Go back in my views. User create.vue. Okay, so everything's compiling, and now what we can do to kind of test our pass, or we're just going to go up in here and we're going to switch them to, so let's say login. And so we have our login view, which is exactly what we want. We have our logo at the top, we have our email, our password, we have our login button for the do login action, we have our create account, and we have our forgot password link. So that's the UI that we wanted to get. But now let's get the action to go to the create account screen. And I think and then we'll wrap it up for this video. So we're keeping this real simple, and the create account is very, very similar to the user login. So let's open that up. Let's copy everything. Let's go to user create, paste it all in, and let's just make the appropriate changes. So we're not going to use the fancy logo anymore. But what we are going to do is create a traditional header, because we need the back button and all of the other cool things that come along with that. So let's just drop in right up here at the top after the Ion page. Let's drop in a toolbar, and I know I need my Ion header to make this right. So let's drop in the Ion header, and then let's wrap this guy up, Ion header. Format, we have our create account page. So now let's add the other things that it's missing. So we don't need an Ion image anymore, but what we do need is we need all this header stuff. We need the title, the toolbar. I believe those are the only, so yeah, the title and the toolbar. So let's kind of add them, and we don't need a footer. So let's take the footer out, add the title, toolbar. Let's take the footer out, title, toolbar. Everybody's happy. Let's see, can I go to create account? All right, so now I'm at my create account. So I got my create account page showing. For create account now, we're just going to take an email and a password, but I want to change this login button, and I need to get rid of that footer. So also let's change this too. We don't want to get the right name. It's called user create. Let's remove this logo since we don't need it. We still need the rest for the email and password. Logo's not defined. I thought I took it out. Oh, I'm passing it back. So I don't want to pass logo anymore. So let's remove that. Okay. Now we don't want to log in. We actually want to create an account. So let's get this footer out of here. We don't need that footer at the bottom. Let's move the main action from create account in the bottom back up to here. Do create account is our function, and then we don't want to push. We kind of want to take this out here. No, so if I'm not going to create an account, then I think I think the simple thing to do is just say cancel. So let's just call this canceling. So if I'm not going to create an account, I'm going to cancel, and then I'm going to push back to login. Okay. So create account or cancel. Cancel take me back to login. Now let's add the functions that it's looking for. I think the only one we really need is do create account. Let's get that out of there. Get this out of here. Cancel takes me back to login. Create account takes me to create account. Now let's just to get these guys right. Let's just say alert. Do create account so we know that we're in the right function. So see, do create account, cancel, and then let's do the same on our login page. User login. So we know we're hitting our functions when we're supposed to. Okay, so now let's see. So I do login works, create account, go back. Let's make sure we have our binding. So let's do this here. So in our do login, let's also add to this our creds.value, because remember we're using the ref, so we got to get it on the value.email. Let's show our JavaScript prowess. So let's say const email password. And then say equal creds.value. Email is on value, and then let's put them here. You're being bad. Let's get crazy again. Let's use our backticks. So first thing is we're in do login, and the credentials are $email blank blank $. Okay. So so we get our email and our password, so we know that's working. Create account, we know we go to our create account page. Cancel, we go back. I did my, let's do this here. The do forgot password actually requires the email address to function properly. So let's do this here. Let's pull just the email off the creds and say do forgot password, do login, email. Let's clean this up a bit. Do forgot password gets email. So as I said, this is what I wanted to do for today. I wanted to just focus on I forgot to do one more thing in the router. So what we want to do is in the router, we want to, as you can see, I added this requires auth false, requires auth true. So let's put in place the right functionality. So what we want to do is, if you want to go to products page, that requires auth. If you want to go to the home page, that requires auth. And then we don't need to put it on the redirect, because the redirect will take us to home, and then it's going to require the auth there. So that's what that is about. And then what you can do with Vue, and I'll put a link below, with the Vue router, there's functions that are called, or hooks that you can hook into. For example, the specific one that we are going to use is called before each. So basically before it redirects to the route, not redirects, before it kind of renders the route that is specified, you can call a function to determine if you wanted to go to the route or not. And what we're going to do is in our data service that we created, we're going to add a method called hasUser, and it's going to return true if it has a user and false if it doesn't. And so the idea is that what we want to do is we're going to say that if, let's get this right, and then what we're going to say here is that we're going to look at the meta, which is requires auth flag, and if it requires auth and the user doesn't have a user, then we want to redirect to our login page, or go to our login page, and that's what the next function does for us. So we can just say next/login. I didn't get all that. Come on. Right. dataService is not defined, so let me import that guy. So where do I, there's some place I've used it before. I've used it, I use it in my home view. So we're gonna do, oh, we already did that. It's this that we need. So in my router, but since my router is at the same level, right? So we can just do this. Come on. The data service in the same directory. Let's write this. So now data service has user. It's probably throwing an error because there isn't a function called has user. So let's go into data service. And for now, until we implement it, let's just do this. Has user. Is has user a function or a property? Has user is a function. So let's go to data service, has user, and it's always going to return false. That's not that. Right? So now you'll see, because we have the guard on there, I cannot go to home. Let's try and go to home. Why did it allow me to go home? What is my, let's save that. Did I save my route.js? If auth required and it doesn't, then go home. Did I do this right? Oh, I put false on all these. These should be true. Requires auth to go to home. Requires auth. Let's close this so we can see everything. Requires auth. Create account does not require auth. Change password does not require auth. This should be requires auth is false. Doesn't require auth to log in. So true for adding a product. True for home. Those are the only two pages that we're supporting right now. Okay, so let's get this back down to the modal look. So we have our login. If I try to go to home, it redirects me back because I don't know my user. Okay, so what's going to happen now is we have the UI in place, and so what we want to do next with supabase.io is we want to utilize the login functionality that they provide, the create account functionality that they provide, forgot password functionality that they provide, and then also the ability inside of our, where's our router.js, inside of our router.js to kind of put some meat behind this has user function. And as I did in the last video, because I put all of the functionality inside of my data service, we can abstract it out of the application. And everything that has to do with reaching out to supabase, the functions from the client, will all be done directly inside of here. And just as kind of a preview for everyone, let's see if I can pull this over here. So this is my the console from Supabase, the backend that I'm going to be using. They provide the API for here's how you do the user sign up. We're just going to pass the email and password. Here's how you do the user login. We're not doing third-party auth at this time. Here's how you support forgot password. Here's how you support logout. And then the last part is, where is it? There's a way, logout, user, login, sign up. I know. Yeah. So that's how we are going to move forward. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this first part. Like I said, our focus here was really just on getting the UI set up. And next, we're going to take advantage of these functions that Supabase provides us for logging in with the email password. All right, so we will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.